This really is a bad idea. You know why? There's obviously a bad...
Today we're talking about 28 Days From Now. I mean, 28 Days Later, a post-apocalyptic horror punk thriller from director Danny Boyle. Starring Cillian Murphy, Naomie Harris, Gleeson and Megan Burns. 28 Days Later tells the story of the aftermath of an epidemic that breaks out in London caused by a virus known only as the Rage virus. We follow Jim, a bike courier who awakes from his coma as he explores the wreckage and tries to make sense of the insatiable carnage and bloodlust caused by this frightening epidemic. Now seemed as good a time as any for me to finally watch 28 Days Later, and this has been a massive oversight for me as a horror fan. And I can say, despite some limitations revolving around the movie's overall production and filmmaking, it certainly holds up over 20 years later. Given the growing hype of the upcoming 28 Years Later, a new sequel and return of the original writing directing team of Alex Garland and Danny Boyle, it seemed like an even better time for me to spew my thoughts about 28 Days Later out to the internet. I'd be lying if that 28 Years Later trailer didn't push me in the right direction. It looks amazing, and I think the film could end up being the same. Because I went into 28 Days Later mostly blind, I was startled when it started up on screen. The visual style was immediately jarring. I thought my TV was broken or the Blu-ray that I'd borrowed from the library wasn't working correctly, so I frantically texted some friends and did some Google searching. And it turns out the graininess of the movie is purposeful and by way of its production. Given that large swaths of the movie take place in a seemingly abandoned London, digital cameras like the Canon XL1 were more portable and easier to set up. You could start filming within 2 to 3 minutes on these. Given the movie was made on an $8 million budget and they were often running out of money throughout the production, they really had to adapt to their circumstances on the fly. That's all to say, for those who are also coming into this with no prior knowledge, no, your TV's not broken. This is a choice the filmmakers had to make in order to get their vision on screen. And while at first I found it difficult to look at, and seriously, it is a little bit difficult to look at in some segments, a strange spell began to come over me and eventually I started to find it quite beautiful. The DIY aesthetic is charming, and many of the best shots of the movie involve Cillian Murphy's Jim just walking amongst the wreckage of London. I kind of stopped noticing the lower fidelity and graininess as the film went on. It becomes a nice hybrid of found footage and DIY documentary punk aesthetic, which fits very well with Garland and Boyle's vision of a post-apocalyptic London. This could easily be a tape that someone found amongst the debris of a lost library. Something you pop into your VHS player, but who has one of those these days? And sit back gobsmacked at the spectacle on display. Given that 2002 was briefly after the impact of the Blair Witch Project and the advent of filmmakers embracing digital cameras for shooting their movies, as David Lynch's Inland Empire came out just a couple years after this, it gives 28 Days Later an innovative appeal without being pompous. Not to mention that cinematographer Anthony Dodd Mantle was a pioneer of the digital format with a keen eye, later winning an Oscar on his work for 2008's Slumdog Millionaire, which was also filmed entirely digital. The visual style of the movie is almost like a comic book, especially in the visceral action moments where our characters interact with and fight the zombies. The blood is bloody red. The various cameras catch multiple angles so that the characters have a dynamism, which makes the movie feel even more propulsive and frightening. There's a dread in these moments that feel a lot like future movies from Alex Garland, specifically 2024 Civil War. He was very much cutting his teeth on the 28 Days Later script, and you can even see the impact that Danny Boyle had on his filmmaking too. That Garland crafts such living and breathing human characters is a large reason why this movie works. And in Civil War, that found family element is on full display like it is here. The soundtrack for 28 Days Later is absolutely all killer, no filler. From the moment the Godspeed You Black Emperor East Hastings needle drop chimes in, I was hooked. I mean, what better band to score the apocalypse? Film composer John Murphy's score is perfect as well, and I've been jamming a lot of those cuts in my free time. There's a quietly triumphant and palpably sad undercurrent to the movie's tone that is greatly enhanced by the movie's score and soundtrack. 28 Days Later's runtime is 113 minutes. Not once during the movie did I check my phone, other than to Shazam some of the songs playing, utterly transfixed by its narrative. I miss movies like this, and I know we get stuff like that today, but it's not the same. This feels like a sister movie with Children of Men or Cloverfield even. Thrillers from the early mid-aughts just felt adventurous with an exciting sense of momentum. I had to figure out where Jim and Selena would go next in this intoxicating, depressing depressing wasteland. The movie would be nothing without its characters. And while we may not learn much about them by the end, we do get some background with dialogue, exposition, and visual storytelling, such as Jim going home to find that his parents have passed, potentially having ended their own lives due to fear of being infected or having an infection. Once we meet Selena, who is imbued with such raw power by Naomie Harris, we know exactly what we need to know about her. She is willing to do whatever it takes to protect herself from becoming infected with the rage. When Jim enters the picture, things get a little bit Hollywood lovey-dovey, but it still works. Selena's tough exterior has cracked due to a love that has allowed her to trust again. What can I say? I'm a romantic at heart, and this part worked for me. And given the movie's alternate endings, it makes Selena and Jim's love even more gut-wrenching. Brendan Gleeson shows up as Frank, a father with a riot shield who's living in a high-rise apartment tower with his daughter Hannah, played by Megan Burns. A doting father with a penchant for whiskey, Frank is tough, but not without a sense of humor. We quickly fall for him and Hannah, and once they become a makeshift family with Jim and Selena, we're won over completely. The sequence where they go shopping in an abandoned and empty grocery store is both comforting and unsettling, and one of the best scenes of the movie. But the pending tragedy is made even more painful because Boyle allows us time to love these characters. To round out my praise of the actors, Cillian Murphy's Jim is revelatory. He feels effortless on screen, just immediately baby-faced and captivating. He's a perfect everyman character, and utilizing the plot device to have him enter the movie in media res along with the audience only adds a sense of intrigue and confusion for us. We're rooting for Jim because his survival is our surviving his and the others' stories. Some of my favorite moments of the movie are his interacting with this new version of his old world, specifically the moment in the gas depot where he unalives a small boy who's been infected with rage. So quickly Jim reacts in that moment, and it's in those small instances that Cillian Murphy works his magic. Oppenheimer, never heard of him. The ending of 28 Days Later is what convinced me that it's a masterpiece, or near one. I watched all the other endings they filmed, and the one they went with is the best. Given how bleak and terrifyingly tense the rest of the movie is, the almost dreamlike segment where Jim, Selena, and Hannah pull this enormous and hand-sewn banner across this field out to signal the Jets to say, hey, we're here, we need help, just filled my heart with joy. That they could overcome such tragedy and pain only for it to culminate in this beautiful moment, it may well have brought a tear to my eye. It worked in a traditional Hollywood sense, being just right in its nod to the trope, winking at the audience but also perfectly self-serious in its world building. While Danny Boyle and his filmmaking team did try to distance themselves from the zombie label, the impact of 28 Days Later on the genre is undeniable. Though I would say it's more of a post-apocalyptic adventure horror film with some kinda sorta zombies, that still makes it a zombie movie. The zombies work as a fulcrum for us to get to know and appreciate the characters, the real allure of this film. The movie helped revitalize the genre, and seeing it now for the first time in 2025, I can see how far its influence has gone. Zombies were everywhere after this movie came out, from Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead remake to Robert Kirkland's Walking Dead boom. Zombies continue to be a touchstone of cinema to this day, though I'd argue that vampires are having a little bit of a moment right now.
You must bounce on it.
I'd feel perfectly comfortable placing 28 Days Later on a midnight double feature with George A. Romero's Night of the Living Dead. What do you think of 28 Days Later? Is it bloody goodness, or would you rather be infected with the rage virus than ever watch this movie again? Leave all the comments below, and before you go, don't forget to like and smash that subscribe button. Thank you so much for watching this video and continuing to support the channel. Until next time, repent. The end is extremely fucking nigh.
Blood. There's something in the blood.